As the world begins to emerge from the cave of the 21st century and opens its eyes onto the suffering from centuries of injustice and the bastardization of what it means to be free, the New Nomos podcast is a call for a new beginning, a call for the new men and the new women that yearn to be truly free, a call for us to fulfill our destiny, a call for a new nomos on the earth. Welcome to the New Nomos podcast. I'm Abdallah Dutton, inviting you to join me on this journey of discovery, to define what the New Nomos is and what we need to get there. Hello and welcome back to the New Nomos podcast. This episode is with Dr Maria Vraka, who is a music researcher, educator, teacher, pianist, and life coach with a passion for developing human potential. Over this last year, I've been on a journey with Maria and our master coach, Rashad Ahmed, and it seems so fitting to close off this year with this conversation with her. In it, we're exploring the language and philosophy of Western classical music. It's a subject that I am so passionate about. And I knew going into it that Dr. Maria had the key that I needed to open a door in my understanding of the world of music. And as you listen to the conversation, you'll understand what I'm talking about. And so without further ado, I present to you episode 38, Music and Our Divine Reality, the Language and Philosophy of Western Classical Music.
Where I grew up, there was nothing, no music teacher, nothing. But that was my mom's desire to see me as a little girl, because I was a boy, practically. I was such a tomboy, always getting in trouble. So she tried to make me a little bit more girly. She tried ballet. I didn't like it. I didn't listen to the teacher. We tried Greek dancing, the same. And then she took me to this teacher. There was one teacher in the city, and she said, well, unless her feet touch the ground, I'm not going to teach her. I was 6 at the time. So my mom got disappointed, but she found a student of that lady who was a young girl. So she started giving me lessons in the church hall. And I had an interest for that. I mean, I started playing tunes just from start. And the next year I went to that big teacher, and she took me on, and she was my teacher for the rest of my, my studies until I got my diploma. So that's how it started. Very, 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 by chance. Yeah.
And that was the piano?
That was the piano, yeah. I was practicing in a church hall without hitting, with gloves that had cut fingers out when I was like 7, 8 years old, because it took my parents 3 years to save money to get me a piano. My dad took us to a trip to Athens. We stayed in a hotel for 2 days. We were going around. It was so out of their comfort zone. So I'm very grateful to them for that. And I started the tradition because my sister started after me, my cousins, and, I started something there with music, but I'm the only professional.
How did music feel when you were a little girl?
That's another funny story, because at the time that I started playing the piano, my cousin died, who was 21 years of age. So she died of leukemia in a very short period of time from the time she was diagnosed. So it was very sad. There was no music in the house. There was no TV. Everybody was crying. And I remember I was around 6 years old, and my parents had 2 cassettes. One was like Greek bouzoukia, like completely, easy music. And there was something classical. And that's all I was listening on repeat. So thinking back, It was like I was looking for that stimulation, which was not around. So me as a child, that I found it, and I had this little player, and I kept on playing the same things. But that's that's how I started, with these two different things in my ears. When I started playing piano, I started making up tunes very easily, very easily. Anything I could hear, I could play back. So there was something there already. Yeah, it was my time. I liked it.
So you've always been like an audio person?
I think so. I remember I used to, because in Greece, in the you sleep in the summer, especially in the afternoon. Everybody was sleeping, and I would have a little transistor radio under my pillow, listen to music the whole time, because I didn't want to sleep. I never sleep anyway. I didn't want to sleep. I didn't want to sleep when I was a child, so I was listening to these things when everybody else was asleep, but I had to mute it under my pillow because there were no headphones, nothing like that. I was looking for it. It was like I was looking for music everywhere.
And when the birds sing?
I don't know, I wasn't that aware of that. I remember I had a friend, a nightingale, because I was studying for my A levels in the night. I am a night person anyway. And this nightingale would see the light of my room and sing the whole night, keep me company. It was so amazing for 2 months, in the spring. So that's the only time I noticed the birds. That bird that was my friend. But before that, I was just understanding it as nature. Yeah.
But you see now, like with the life of playing the piano and being in the world of music and all of this kind of your fine tuning of your audio faculties and everything, when you hear a bird sing, can you see in your mind the notation?
Yeah. All frequencies, I can.
So would you be able to write the song of a nightingale in musical notation?
Yes, but not in real time, because the memory is limited. So you can only remember a few seconds. But if it was recorded and I hear it back, yes, I could do segments. So if I write something, I will lose what is happening. So it doesn't happen in real time. I have to translate somehow. But I can write anything I hear.
Amazing.
As far as my memory helps, it retains that,
Now, something that I got stuck on the other day, right? How is it possible that Beethoven could write symphonies when he was completely deaf?
Okay. He wasn't deaf from birth. Yeah?
No, but like that later part of his life where he lost his hearing, but he was still able to write symphonies. Now, I want to know, how is that possible?
Okay. If you think now of a phrase, can you think it in your head and not speak it out?
Yes.
Okay. It's the same with music. It's called audiation. It's an internalized process of music as a language. So he could hear his ideas and then write them in paper. Musicians have that. It's called, even babies. When I work with babies, that's what we're trying to do. Internalize music. You can internalize music too. You have it anyway. You can listen to something in your head, a melody, Can't you?
Yeah, I mean, you can play a song in your head, right?
Yeah. But for him, because he was a composer, this was something new. But it was his language. So he could compose anything. He didn't. What he couldn't be, let's say, in charge of was the result of the people playing. And that's why in movies you see him very frustrated, and he had this reputation of being a very angry and difficult man. But it was because he couldn't conduct properly, or because he couldn't hear the environment. But his music he could hear, And then it's technique. It's like composing an essay. You compose a symphony or whatever. It's not as simple, but for Beethoven,
What are you currently working on with children and music? You touched on it a second ago.
I have created my own program, which starts from before birth and goes up to 5 years of age. I call it music genius because you get in touch with the genius that is inside the child. So the principle is that we are born, and even before we are born, we can listen to music and have memories of that afterwards. But the most important thing is that we are born with abilities that are very, very defined, and that we, in the process, lose because of our culture, because what is considered to be more desirable around us. For example, we learn the relationships between the notes rather than their absolute position, because if we didn't, if you hear happy birthday to you and then you hear happy birthday to you, you wouldn't know it's the same song. What makes it the same song to your brain is the relationship between the notes, that this is like these steps that are repeated. So that's how we recognize. So we start losing this kind of automatic, it has to do with perception mostly. Babies can identify microtones between two notes, but because the music we hear around us, even the language, is only using certain things, the neuropaths that are developed guide everything to certain paths. In Gestalt psychology, we identify everything by proximity, similarity, and good continuation. So anything we listen, we try to group it according to what we know. So in my system, what I'm trying to do is create an environment where music is not always, it has variety. Different styles, different rhythms, different cultures. And it has this idea of repetition and the idea of silence as well. When you are in a baby class, their music ability is not obvious, but it's obvious when the music stops. They will start singing, they will start moving. It's when their brain is trying to catch up with what has happened. So these are the main principles of my program, and it goes according to characteristics of every age. We go 0 to 18 months, 18 months to 30 months, and then 30 months is 3 to 4 years, and 4 to 5 years. I have the syllabus for all of that.
What's the most interesting experience that you've seen from having done this or doing this?
With people, with the kids, with the children.
Yeah, but like one example of just this, something amazing that you've seen from this work with the children and music.
They are conductors, the babies. They know already how to kind of control their environment. They will show you with their body, with their hands, what they want to hear, with their voices, when they cannot express themselves yet. And yet you see that they understood and they have a favorite song. You have to listen. You have to be very, focused on them. But that's the amazing thing, that they're already ahead of their maturity as bodies in their heads. They're already there, musicians. That's the most fascinating thing. I love it. I love the kids. I love the babies. That's the most fascinating. It's really nice being around them. Yeah.
But also, the baby is completely fresh. There's no conditioning yet. There's no kind of veils and blockages on the reality. And they're completely in tune with their human nature. And this kind of moves into this idea of music at its highest, connecting us to an unseen reality.
Yeah.
Now, how does it do that? And what is happening? How is music like this vehicle to communicate these feelings and these ideas?
These questions, Abdallah, are very difficult to answer. There are whole departments in Cambridge University trying to understand the evolutionary importance of music, because music seems to be before language, seems to be developed before language. Even now, the babies will vocalize something before it's a word. But if you take music away from the world, nobody's gonna die. So that's the main thing. But I can tell you what I think, what my theory is.
Please.
I think music is our main way of connecting with our divine self. It's a way of understanding something that is higher than us. It's something that doesn't need words to be explained. It doesn't need education to be understood. It's something that is in us and connects us with that feeling that we are something above what it's our everyday, life and things. And it's not a mistake. It's not like coincidence that religion has been controlling music for thousands of years. In the Middle Ages, music was only allowed in the framework of religion. If you played music outside that context, you could be killed. And it was only because of the troubadours and the trouvères that were going, this kind of traveling singers that they were going from village to village and kind of spreading the idea of music with the lutes and all that. And then that's how polyphony started. But at the beginning it was completely in the hands of church. And still, church uses music to help people connect with the divine. For me personally, it's a very easy way of escaping the chaos the chaos of everyday life, and it's very available. It's there, so you listen to a piece of music for 3 minutes, and you forget what has happened around you, what is happening in you. You get carried away by that. Scientifically, why? It has to do again with the brain and the way we perceive certain vibrations. It has to do with vibrations. We get into this kind of vibrating state, which does something for us. But I think philosophically is our understanding of our divine nature. Music is our connection with that.
Because, there's that famous video of, I think it was a Japanese man, and he played different types of music to water and then froze the water and looked at the crystals that were created. And, with rock and roll, it was very sharp and very rough. And then with kind of like playing it Mozart or something, and then there's like these beautiful crystals that are formed. And then if you extrapolate that onto the human being as 90% water, then 70% water, then surely it's having this effect on us.
Yeah, I think it's the vibrations. Yeah, the shapes have to do with how well organized the music is in time. How kind of the pattern that it's following is it's canonical. Is that the word? It's a Greek word. Like it repeats in a kind of a balanced way. So in rock music, it's very edgy and it's very. So it creates this bad kind of shape, and we say it's bad for us because internally, probably because we're water, we feel that kind of edge and all that. But some people like it, So.
Of course. Look, to give my personal experience of classical music. You see, for me, classical music was always this thing for old people. It was like old people listened to classical music. Nobody that I knew who was young listened to classical music. And so it just always seemed like it was this thing that was slightly removed. It was like a little bit distant. And I think that's very much the case for many people today that just don't even know what it is. Now, obviously, in times gone by, there was a massive appreciation for music, especially among the higher nobility and the ranking classes that allowed these giants to emerge and flourish because they were obviously supported and looked after. There was a lot of patronage from key wealthy individuals that allowed composers to do what they did. And I feel like today, like there's nobody really composing music on that level.
But you're talking about the social phenomenon. There were no CDs, so music was important to these people, and they were paying for it to be composed. It was what was happening then. Now, with all this production, it's something very expensive to produce. Imagine if you have the orchestra at your... Bach was composing for 5 years a mass for every Sunday of the year, 52 Sundays, a mass for every Sunday, which means he composed it, he rehearsed it, and he played it. For 5 years. We're talking 200. Can you imagine the level of expertise from Bach himself, from the musicians that they had to play like prima vista, like first sing, from the singers? It was a completely different level. And that's something that happens with me as a teacher, because the kids come to learn music, but to play classical music properly, you have to practice 2 hours, 3 hours a day. Nobody has the time. Nobody does that. So we never go to that level unless there is somebody that is really talented or interested. So it's another concept that today is different. Like today, the means are different. So today is about electronic means, something easy, something.
But electronic music, as an example, it won't have the same impact on you as piece of music played by an orchestra.
It's true, because there are no vibrations again. There is no environment. In electronic music, everything is kind of flat. You just hear the frequencies going up and down, but there is no this harmony, this resonance that you hear with natural instruments. And that's the main difference in terms of how it affects you emotionally as an experience. But it's also a matter of taste. They played Mozart to an experience. They played Mozart to these people in the Amazon, started running around because they thought it was something evil coming to them. So it's not everything for everybody. But, it's an experience that it is of high quality, the truth. Hearing a symphony in real time, it does. And you said something really nice, that you went to hear this concert, this Bach Mass, and it changed you.
Yeah, and I cannot say how it changed me.
I wanted to ask you, what does it mean it changed you? Well, I have an idea what happened, but yeah.
But that's why I even said in recounting that experience, I said, all I can say is that the Abdallah that went in was not the same as the Abdallah that left. And I can't articulate it in words. It was just that something happened.
I think what happens with music, with an experience that is so strong that we say it changed us, there is a sense of salvation, especially if you go in there with a feeling of, I don't know, because again I will use chaos. It's like we are this. I heard that recently. We are surfers and balancing between chaos and self-mastery. Life is like that. Now music is something similar. Actually, Jordan Peterson said that about a musician, a jazz musician. He said he was balancing between master. He was like a surfer balancing between mastery, between chaos and mastery. But that's life as well for me. That's what we do. And in music, especially if you go to Bach and it's a religious piece of music, so it has all these ingredients of lifting you up. There are certain steps. There is this sense of salvation. It's almost like catharsis. It's almost like the same process. And it does something to us.
You mentioned there that Bach, and there's these little techniques used to raise you up.
Yeah. What
are those techniques? I mean, obviously there's a vast array of them, but like, What's he doing to the music?
Okay. I will explain it because I can't explain Bach. Well, he's a genius. But in general, what happened with music that had some kind of religious context, even before notation, whatever had a divine meaning, so you talk about Jesus, you talk about love, the melody was going up, there was a peak. And then there was a drop whenever something was really hard on the soul or talking about even human existence. So it was designed to keep you down, to always feel that God is higher than you. So if you think of music as, if you think a line separating, paradise and earth, let's say, in music there is this line that everything goes up as an emotion and everything goes down as an emotion as well. What Bach does very well, he creates these moments of tension that can be for a little bit too long, like again and again and again, until there is one chord that will be your release, like that everything comes to a conclusion. That's something that they use very often. It's called music expectations as well. That is used very often in composition. But that's what it's like. It's like a roller coaster. It's like throws you to the sky and then puts you down. That's what music does. And that's what you hear with Bach. But simply analyze this kind of process of divine and the earthy, whatever, difficult things. So you balance between the two without even knowing. It doesn't have to do with lyrics necessarily. Music does that.
And then when you come to like Mozart, and not like the Requiem Mass or those pieces, but just the pieces which are just joy. Because I've started playing, when I'm putting my boys to sleep, I'll just play a little bit of something Mozart, Beethoven. Well, I don't like to play them Beethoven because it gets them all worked up and then they don't go to sleep.
Yeah, Beethoven has
but if you play, what is it? The Mozart's Sonata Number 16, and I was just lying there and I was just listening to it, and I was thinking that it is sublime. It sounds like almost like a river trickling over rocks or something. It's just this kind of. Don't even know how.
Mozart. When you hear the music of Mozart, you hear a pure genius. It's very difficult as a performer to memorize Mozart because in case of Bach, let's say there is technique. All of us that studied composition from classical music and music theory, it comes from Bach's works because Bach had some principles that he followed. And that way he shaped the whole era. Mozart is just something that comes in his head, exactly like you say, like a river. So even if the idea is repeated, it's not the same. There is a little bit of difference, but it's this pure genius with him. So yeah, your idea of Mozart is correct. That's what you hear. There's no technique. There is technique because the guy was studying since he was 3. He was writing symphonies at 4, 5. But this is all. I mean, I wonder if he lived longer, what he would have created. Who knows?
So with Mozart, it was different then. It was some kind of just inspired sound.
He was also a rebel, so he didn't like laws, and he would just do whatever he liked. And he wasn't respected very much because of that. He will stare like problems in the palace and stuff like that because he would do exactly what he wanted. Once at university, they showed us a manuscript from an original manuscript of Mozart, and the original manuscript of Beethoven's 5th Symphony. Okay, so the Mozart thing had no corrections. It was like a clean, like that. For Beethoven to come to the to that theme, it took him 5 pages of crosses. He was kind of, so it was working on the theme. It wasn't something that was happening naturally. So whatever talent was there, he was working on it as well. It's a different process of composing, but Mozart is one of the exceptions, really.
Well, I mean, to compose a symphony at 4 or 5 years old is exceptional, right?
And annoying. because where do you go from there? Yeah.
Oh, amazing. But in that book, The 10 Symphonies, it doesn't talk much about Mozart, to be honest. But it does say that his whole life was a composition. So there's the pieces of work which he wrote down, but his life was composing. So whether he was at a dinner party, he would be playing music with the cutlery. Or if he was walking down the corridor, he'd be like, his steps would be in a rhythm, so everything he did was just composing music.
But he was on the autistic spectrum too, huh?
Okay.
So that's another, he had Tourette's. He used to swear and he couldn't control himself. So this obsession with sound is a genius, is a revelation of a genius, but is a revelation of something that is not the mainstream, I don't know, the way that brain usually works. He was on the autistic spectrum. That's why this obsession with sound, yeah.
And there's a different, I mean, my experience with the Mozart that I have listened to, it has a very different feel to all other compositions. There's nothing like it. It's different.
Yeah, because he doesn't obey any rules. So you don't hear the principles of the aesthetics of his era. You just hear him. You just listen to his ideas. That's why he's so unique.
Now, how do you express an idea through music? This is the thing, because when you get into the technicality of music and the way the books are written talking about music and this idea and this contrast and this feeling and this, it's like, how are the composers doing that with the music?
It's complicated, but it has, I think it has two parallel things that are happening. The first thing is you learn the technique, you learn a method. It's almost like you're learning a recipe for something. So if you want to create a sonata, there are certain steps you have to make, like A, B, A. Like you have the theme, then you have a variation on the theme in another scale, and you go back to the first idea and finishing always in your toning, in your original scale. There are steps that you take. So if you wanted to compose something that is sounds like Mozart, sounds like Bach, it's very easy. It's called pastiche. It's not even considered to be a composition, but it is making something. It's not easy, very difficult, but it is making something in the style of these composers. So after you have studied for all these years and they have kind of put in your head all these ideas, then you have to break out of that to find your own voice, which is what I'm trying to do with the intuition course with Rishad, because I seem to have blockages everywhere. Everything sounds like something that I have heard before, something. So to find your original voice, it's an internal process. It has to do with your aesthetic, what you like as a general feeling, your favorite scales. But it is a process that is not magical. It's not happening if you go to the sea and you watch the waves go up and down. There is a technique behind that. But the original idea, that's something that has to come sometimes from up. You have to become this conduit. You have to be open to receive an idea that is original, that is out of what you have heard before. And so if you have this idea, which could be a melody, which could be a harmonic progression, and then you build on that. So you have your first kind of, like, how do you call the thing that you put in the bread to yeast. You have your yeast, yeah. You have your yeast, and then you build around that, yeah. In very simple terms.
So, how was Beethoven's music political?
Political?
Yeah, because he was, I mean, my understanding of Beethoven, a lot of his work is that against the political impositions on him, so the rise of Napoleon and all of this chaos that's happening in Europe at his time, he was calling people through his music to be free.
Yeah.
And yearning for this freedom and this kind of warrior courage.
Abdallah, you have captured music as something that is very philosophical, very, high. You talk about music from a historical, philosophical point of view. But in reality, what Beethoven did was breaking the harmony. Beethoven is the most revolutionary composer of his time. He's the one that introduced Romanticism. He's the only composer that is both classical and romantic. And he did that by creating these extended chords that they were not major minor anymore. He put a ninth, a 13th, like notes that they were in continuity that were dissonant. So they were creating this volume. He put brass into his orchestra. He created this kind of very epic music, if that's his but his political resistance was coming even from using different chords or putting a couple of trumpets in his orchestra. That was a political act for these times. And the famous anecdote, he wouldn't bow in front of the emperor and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, he was a revolutionary. Beethoven is, for me, is my favorite, one of my favorite. Bach first and then Beethoven. He has advanced music to an extent that within his lifetime that it didn't happen before or after. I mean, now people are stuck. We are on postmodernism and they don't know what they are doing. We're going back, because there is a limit to all this freedom. I mean, modernism broke all of that. Yeah.
So you said that using the brass instruments and the trumpets, that was political.
It could be, yeah.
Why?
Wouldn't it? Because if every political system has certain principles. So if the emperor thought that the music he likes had to have certain instruments, certain harmonies, even something so small was a political act.
Okay. Well, I also hear it. I mean, there's the one piece by Beethoven, the Coriolan Overture.
Yeah.
And it's like the use of the trumpet in that is just like, it's so militant. It's just like, it's a war cry. Like you hear it as the trumpet's going off. It's just like, yes, on to war. It's brilliant. I love it.
Imagine how brave it was from him to do that. If he's the first to do it. Go against the whole system, a whole aesthetic of the classical period. I love Beethoven. He's amazing.
Is that what? So you mentioned romanticism. Is that romanticism what he was doing?
The principles of romantic music is that harmony had become more interesting. It's accepting more dissonant chords. It's accepting more emotions. Like everything is like you die on the piano to play a romantic song. I mean, unless you just leave your last breath there, it's not romantic. So, and it went into very the expertise became very, very difficult. It was almost acrobatics. The romantic music is all about craftsmanship. So the most difficult songs, the most difficult chord progressions, the most emotions, all of that. And some of these composers suffered as well for it. I mean, they were living like that, like Schubert. Like he had this miserable life, and he was producing this beautiful music. So yeah, that's what romanticism is as an aesthetic. Yeah, if you wanted to analyze the songs, yeah.
Well, I mean, I also know that Beethoven's life was pretty miserable at times. I mean, he struggled a lot, and he still produced this magnificent music. So do you think that was an escape, or from a kind of like psychological perspective?
What Beethoven had in his heart as an artist didn't necessarily mean it was his character as well. The two things can be separate. It's very often that there are people that are very awkward, very rude, and then you listen to them playing, or you listen to their work, and it's absolutely amazing. Somehow he couldn't relate to the world the same way he related to his music, to his divine, let's say, self. So he was open as a soul when it came to creation, but maybe he was closed when it came to interaction with other people. That's me as a coach now. I'm saying, I don't know. I mean, it was hard because he was losing his hearing. How frustrating is that for a composer, and for somebody with his character as well, because he was a very kind of opinionated man and strong man. So yeah, losing control of
And now there's this other giant, Richard Wagner.
Okay.
I think I've mentioned Wagner to you, and you seem to not be so positive towards Wagner.
No, I'm positive towards everybody. I'm not impressed as much as you are with Wagner. It has nothing to do with his value as a composer or what he did.
Because what impresses me about Wagner is the ring cycle and the politics in it and the mythology in it and the narrative that's within it.
Exactly. So it's not a musical appreciation.
Right, but that's what I don't have, and I want to kind of explore a little bit more a musical appreciation of Wagner. Again, not speaking or not understanding the grammar of the language of music. It's like I can experience it and feel the thing and experience whatever I experience, but it's like I feel that there's a level missing. There's something there. Like I said to you right at the beginning, it's like hieroglyphics. I know there's something there. I know something's being said, but I can't understand it.
But, okay, that's parenthesis. We'll talk about Wagner. But music is not always to be understood, It's to be felt as well. I mean, you don't have to analyze everything. I think because these characters are very much prominent figures, which you are attracted to. That's what you are interested in, but maybe they don't have to say that much with their musical language. You just have to, the value of it is the experience that you get out of their music and their life. But yeah, we can talk. I mean, Wagner thought his music should be experienced as if it was a religion, as if it was something sacred. He turned off the lights in the auditorium. Before that, because the king and all these people were there, the lights were on. Now the lights were off for Wagner. He created his own stage, his own theater I think it was for the ring cycle, because that was 18 hours of music. It was played in 2 days, so he created his own theater, which was hollow. The stage was hollow underneath. So he put half the orchestra under the stage, which is what they do in musicals now. So Wagner, just by taking these steps, he has influenced the whole of the 19th, 20th century. He is a big man. But if you want to decode his music, I don't know how much value is in that. It's again big chords, big orchestration. I mean, he doubled or tripled the instruments of the orchestra thing. The guy was, he had massive ideas. Everything was big and, so he creates this epic feeling of everything. And he's drawn into these stories as well of how do you say, of politics, like of people that rule, that they lose their,
Power.
their power and they come back. He was a traveler like that. I think that was his life. That's what he was looking for. And I know why you're drawn to it. Yeah. So that's the. But again, as somebody that had an influence in music in general, yes, he's one of the big characters.
But yeah, there's this thing of the leitmotiv.
Yeah.
What is that?
Leitmotiv is that every character has its own music, its own little theme.
Yes.
So whenever Abdallah appears in the play, this music plays, this cello song, whatever. So that's the first time that they did that they created characters almost like a theater play with leitmotifs. Before it was an idea, one original idea that was developed with, mostly through the sonata idea, this cyclical ABA form. But with the leitmotif, things were more free, because now the ideas could kind of come anytime into the music and then go, and it didn't have to be a continuation of progression and stuff like that. So yeah, the leitmotif is the little melody for its character.
This is just, when you said that to me, the thing that appeared in my mind was the Emperor Jahangir, the man that built the Taj Mahal.
Okay.
His father. His passion was basically taming cheetahs, and his favorite cheetah, his favorite cheetah would be carried around on a palanquin. You know those things with the guys carrying them?
Okay.
Yeah, so he had the cheetah, the cat, it's there, just sitting on the palanquin, and it would be carried around the palace. And he had his own musician to announce his arrival. So it was like the emperor's favorite cheetah was like a prince, it was like a human. It had its own like little entourage, and when you were talking about the leitmotiv, that's what I was thinking of. I was like, oh yeah, Emperor Jahangir made a leitmotiv for his favorite cheetah.
That's very Roman as well. For example, Peter and the Wolf. The orchestral thing. Have you played that to your children? That's full of leitmotifs.
What is that?
Peter and the Wolf.
But what is it?
It's a piece of music.
Okay.
That portrays every instrument of the orchestra with a character. So the wolf is like brass. The Peter is violin, so the kids listen to it and recognize the instruments as they recognize the characters.
Now, the harmonics of our voices.
Okay.
I know from my experience with you and the others that were on the coaching course with us, and you had your list of all the different keys.
Yeah.
And based on the tonation of our voice? Is that what you'd say?
The fundamental frequency, because we speak, but there is one frequency that we're drawn to, and that's the fundamental of our voice. Yeah.
So based on our fundamental frequencies, you can read into our character.
That's a new thing to me. That Richard introduced that to me. What I do, I can hear people's voices and I can say you are C major, you are F minor, you are this. That's what my ability is, and that's why it makes me a bit. It's a rare ability, so not many people can do that. But there is this philosophy, it comes from Germany, that every key has certain characteristics. And as I was curious, I started listening. I mean, I don't know the tonality of my husband's voice or my child. I never noticed, I was thinking the other day, and I still don't notice because I notice what they say to me. I don't care about, it doesn't, But since I started noticing people's voices, when I say, okay, according to this philosophy, this is what you are, people agree. Even mine, which is like a C minor, it's like always looking for lost love. I do. I want love around, and it is always like, I want more. It is part of me. But what happened now with your family as well? There's something else that has happened. Because it happened that one of your brothers speaks in the same tonality as your dad, and one of your sisters same tonality as your mom. So now it's a whole new inquiry. Do we influence our kids? Do they take characteristics from us and they take out also our frequency? It might be a real theory, this one, to be tested. You're the outliners, you and your sister. You don't fit in there, but I don't know how real is that, But so that's the principles of this idea, is that certain tonalities are carrying certain characteristics, makes you feel like that. And until now, most people find themselves in what that philosophy says. Yeah, they agree.
Well, you know what I found? You see, like, you mentioned my brother and my one sister and whatever. I think I'm F sharp. I speak in F sharp major.
Yeah.
But I can flip over to F sharp minor. And the difference in characteristics of the two are like horrendous polar opposites. Where one is like the triumphant giant or whatever, and the other side is just like gloomy, horrible yuck. And when you mentioned all the ones of my siblings, what was interesting for me was to read the negative of the positive. And because I know them all, having grown up with them, I could see exactly the same thing as with me, that when I'm gloomy, I'm F sharp minor, right? And then I'm really horrible. And with each one of my siblings, if I read the negative version of the positive, it was spot on, as well as the positive. If they're on a good vibration, if they're on a good frequency, they're on their major, but they contain within them the possibility of minor when everything's going wrong.
Yeah.
And it was spot on with every single one of them. It was really interesting.
It's really interesting. And imagine, Abdallah, if it was as easy to categorize people by knowing their scales. It will become a selection process, which is not very nice. So we need to leave a bit of room for interpretation in that. But yeah, we do have major and minor in us. We do resonate more with other people. It's just interesting that it makes sense musically too. Because, for example, when we were doing the course and we were 5 coaches, all of us were forming one chord, with Rishad in it as well. We were forming one chord, which is amazing as an idea that we all came together. And I think that group of us will last a long time like that. Kind of, we connected in that course. So if you put all our notes together, it was making a chord.
Wow.
We harmonized, which is a beautiful thing to see. And I had this idea of people sending me their voices, reading a poem, and then isolating just one line of that, and see if I can create clusters of people that have similar principles, similar kind of ideas of the world, and we can create a piece of music that will always evolve as new people are coming in. You know what I mean? So it's just another way of looking at reality, but through a musical way. And it's amazing that it makes sense as music, because it could not. It's not necessary that it will be harmonious, but it is. That's the interesting thing.
Right. So you were telling me earlier that you're looking for your voice.
Yeah.
There you go. Boom.
That's my voice.
Well, you're saying that you were telling me about the musicians and how it's like tapping into that kind of.
That's what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds to me very clearly like there's your voice coming through, because that was your realization from your life of learning music, right? Yeah. And there's your inspiration where you've got all the notes laid out in front of you in the chord that harmonizes, and I just need to write it in your own voice. And then there's new notes come in, we just, add it. It'll be fun. I want to hear that piece of music.
I know, me too, but it's not easy. But it's an interesting concept. It's very interesting. And it makes sense in a group of people that kind of resonate,
Yeah.
So, might be a research project. Who knows? I don't know.
What note is the polar opposite of F sharp major?
Polar opposite.
Or what one does it clash with?
The one next to it.
Which is what?
F.
Oh, and that's what Zainab is, my little sister.
In music, the most dissonant thing you can find is two notes next to each other. So F to F sharp, it will be the worst sound you can create. Yeah. Doesn't mean it has to be the same for humans, It's just music.
We are frequency, so our energy must be a frequency.
Yeah, but it might not be the frequency of our voice. It might be another frequency.
Well, yeah, but I mean the frequency of our heart. But it would, even though we can't hear it, it's still resonating at a frequency, no?
Funny enough, you know what the frequency of the heart is?
F sharp major.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
Ah, c'est très intéressant. But what do you mean by that?
I don't know, Richard said that. Because they have made these bells that they make this F sharp sound, and that's the sound, probably is the sound that the heart resonates more with. You feel it more in your heart. That's what it means.
So why are there no compositions in F sharp major? Because I looked.
It's a very difficult key to write. It has six sharps, 6 notes that are like raised. So if you wanted to write that, it's very difficult. You will choose an easier scale, something that doesn't have so many black keys. That's the main reason. If you go to Bach, he must have something in F sharp. He wrote the prelude and fugues in all the keys, so there must be an F sharp major minor.
How does one go about learning the technicalities of the expression of music? Or how does it work?
Well, Abdallah, it takes years to learn all of that if you want to become a composer. But for you, in a kind of amateur level, let's say, you have to look into aesthetics. So look at the aesthetics of music, look at philosophy of music, Adorno. They explain kind of how the principles of the music and why music was built the way it's built. But if you want to go deep into that, you need to have some basic understanding of music. Maybe find analysis of symphonies. What happened? Because there is such a thing that's called analysis. So the analysis of the Beethoven's, for example, I did the analysis of the first movement of the 6th Symphony of Beethoven when I was at the university. And I had to say how it was orchestrated, why, and all that. And I love this. It was a canvas of the outside. It was a beautiful thing. So yeah, you have to read more specific about music rather than the history of the time.
There was one thing that you said to me, and it hit home because I know it's the truth, and that was the thing of feeling the music.
Yeah, difficult. You're asking me. I don't know how to feel the music a lot of the time because I'm so such an expert in everything that it takes away. I have to just go into almost like a meditative state. But you cannot get a meaning out of it. But the way you speak at the moment, you try to analyze and get meaning out of everything you listen to, because that's where you are now. Like that's what you want to.
But I tell you, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
But listening to Mozart last night with my boys in bed, I wasn't trying to find anything, and it was just like, because I'm very visual, for me that sound I saw as this kind of trickling river and this water.
But you were with your kids, so probably you were in a more receptive, you're more loving situation.
Oh no,
you were
definitely.
More relaxed.
Oh yeah, no, I was just lying there in the bed with, one on each side, and I was like, hey, we're going to listen to some Mozart. But it was just this kind of like absolutely beautiful, kind of just this kind of like, almost like, it's like in some kind of fantasy movie, some like fantasy forest with little fireflies and like this trickling water. But that was a feeling though. That wasn't a kind of, I didn't try and create that image. It was just something that kind of appeared in my head.
You have to let go of a lot of your preconceptions of what the music is for you. I would say as an exercise, listen to things that you haven't listened before, because the things that you already have thought about is difficult to switch off the mind. So the composers you like, but listen to new things and see if you can listen with a fresh kind of point of view without trying to.
Beethoven's quartets.
I love them, yeah.
How can one swim in them? Just listen?
That's not an answer a musicologist can give. That's an answer somebody spiritual can give. It's remember how we were saying you have the peripheral vision and the focus vision. You need to just empty yourself of everything and just become this kind of, let music flow through you. So it takes a certain amount of intention. You need to practice that, especially because at the moment you are listening to everything in a different way. Yeah. So try not to listen to the notes. Try to listen to the essence of them. Try to listen to, I don't know, your feelings while you are listening to something. Don't focus on what is happening. Focus on what you are feeling. Difficult, Abdallah. If we knew how to do that, we would be better in life too. Music is a very good kind of metaphor for life. Very good practice.
There's definitely is. Yeah, it's that thing of feeling. You got to feel it.
To let go of your perception, to let go of your analytical mind. It's all of that stuff that we talk about. That works in music too, especially when you listen to music as an expert. When you try to find meaning in it and you start analyzing it, and sometimes it's better to be ignorant.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the New Nomos podcast. In this episode, Dr. Maria talked about how Bach creates tension through his music, and he builds it and he builds it and he builds it until the point at which a chord is played which releases all of that tension. And I have to say, going back to this episode and doing the edit on it, I realized that this conversation was a manifestation of that essence. I came to the episode viewing Western classical music through the eyes of its historical context, its political context, and the philosophy behind it. And Dr. Maria was coming with her experience and knowledge of music and the feeling of music. And it all led up to the end where the tension between our understanding met, the chord was played, and the secret of this episode was released. Once again, I've put all the relevant links in the episode description. Please do follow Dr. Maria. She's absolutely amazing. Her insights into the world are so moving. She's absolutely amazing. So follow her, keep tuned into her work, and I hope you've had a blessed year. I wish you all the best for 2023. See you in the new year. Stay tuned. Thank you.